Hello, you lucky people of Musicland. It's me, Graham Coath, again with another My Music. 2 in 2 days. What more could you possibly want? I know you're saying, I really want to see that promo video from Analog Trash again. Well, you're in luck, because here it is. And as the music fades, you see before your eyes, Bon and Pete are here with me, just like that. It's almost like magic, revealing the curtain. There you go. The wonderful Analog Trash there, who, of course, you're well versed in, because that is your label, is it not?
It is.
It is indeed.
It
is indeed. Very happy to be on them as well.
There we go. And so if people are wondering what all of that loud video was all about, other than watching people throwing guitars into swimming pools, which was quite entertaining, it's a little club that you can join. And who doesn't love a little club these days? It's a supporters club where actually you can pay a small amount of money every month, and for that small amount of money, not only will you get access to everything digitally that Analog Trash have got to offer via the wonderful world of Bandcamp, but you will also be able to get a box every quarter or so full of lovely little goodies like badges, stickers, cassette tapes, which, you know, wow, for some people out there, you might be wondering, what on earth is that? You plug this into the wall and it makes music. No, not really. Wow. You actually have to buy a little device for that to work. It's great. And you also need, very handily, if you do ever use one of these, you also need a pencil. Remember that. If you ever buy a cassette player to play these on, always make sure you've got a pencil as well. All shall become revealed when you buy it. And there will be CDs as well. So if that feels your kind of thing, if you'd like to support independent music, including the music that the people here today that we're going to talk to are making, please do go along to analogtrash.com and check it out. There you are. That's the plug over. And now we can talk. So, guys, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Shall I go first?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm Bon. Me and Pete are from Flange Circus. Recently signed.
I'm going to just have to stop you right there, right? Because that is one of the best names ever.
Thank you.
It really,
you think so? I'm glad you do.
I totally do. Okay. So for anyone that missed that, that's Flange Circus. Okay, you may carry on, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But it really is one of the best names ever. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm in the band. I play a bit of guitar, not very well, and I do the sort of sequencing side of things and the production and the mixing, and because I've got a studio as well, and write some of the songs alongside Pete. And Pete can probably introduce himself, and you probably guess what he does, given his background.
Oh, he's a singer, isn't he? Undoubtedly.
Yeah. Soprano.
Yes. No, so I'm Pete. I am the bass player in Flange Circus, but I also play a bit of synths and also do some of the drum programming and I mine a bit of vocalizations, I guess, on a couple of things. Prodding.
Well, you kind of gave the game away by having bass guitars in the background.
I suppose I did. Yeah.
For people listening, how would you both go and describe your music? There's an opening question. Bon, what would you call the definitive Flange Circus sound?
Well, we describe ourselves, somewhat probably pretentiously, as Horntronica, because we don't really know what to call ourselves. And I know a lot of bands, it's a bit of an interview cliche to say, well, we don't really sound like, you know. because we've got so many diverse sort of influences that come together. It's electronic, but we're kind of obsessed with, and it's a mixture of the hauntological and the electronic, I suppose. Although we're not really a hauntological band as such, but we're definitely into the spookier, darker side of things. So it's dark electronica, I suppose, with sort of leanings towards post-punk, maybe. Pete, can you help me out? Do you think I'm doing a good job on describing this?
It was described as technoplasm quite recently, wasn't it?
Technoplasm, and hauntronica.
Pastoral, techno-pastoralism, wasn't it, as well? Because we've got an interest in we've got an interest in the sort of weird countryside, weird things, the absurd. So they all come in, and it I don't know, it covers a lot of genres. We kind of, sometimes it's more techno, sometimes a bit more industrial, sometimes it's a bit more cinematic, sometimes it's a bit more kraut rocky, neo kraut, if you want to call it that.
It's modern day folk music, then, really, isn't it?
Yeah. We don't hold our fingers in our ears in any shape or form, but you know, yeah.
I mean, that's the way to look at it. I mean, you're obviously keen purveyors of tech and sounds. Yes, that's a good way of looking at it, isn't it? I mean, are you both natural geeks when it comes to technology?
How did you spot Graham? I don't know.
I don't know.
Just met us, and it's like, you know. Yes, we are. I think we are geeky, nerdy people. I probably always have been all my life. So yeah, and then that's translated into the music. You know, so we're constantly, well, me and Pete are, at least, because of course there's John Taylor's also in the band, who's not with us today, but me and Pete are the ones who send each other sort of, you know, what we consider to be synth porn, you know, pictures of synths, and go, oh, look at that sort of thing. So yeah, we are the geeky, nerdy side of things, which translating to, you know, is a bit of a bugbear in some senses, because it becomes a you know, difficult live setup with lots of cables and things sending messages to each other and the like. So but we get away with it.
So you can tell, you know, if you, it's typically it's what you do to get to know where someone sits on the musical spectrum is stand behind them whilst they're in WH Smith's. Other news agents are available.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
And just see what it is that they pick up. And I'm guessing you're kind of going for the sort of sound on sound, you know, electronic music. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
sound on sound. I don't know, Pete, you'd be something else, wouldn't you?
I don't generally read bass player magazines, but probably future music or computer music, something like that. Yeah. More my bag.
Future music. Yeah. I remember many moons ago when I was young. I think I've told this story before, so sorry if I'm boring anybody out there. But I doubt anybody's actually trawled through all my 150 odd podcasts. But I remember when I was really young reading an article in one of those magazines about, and I can't remember who the band were now, but a couple of guys who were standing on the top of tall buildings and then dropping off watermelons to record the sound of the watermelon as it hits the floor, and then sequencing it. I mean, I just, you know, that really kind of
that sounds amazing.
It interests me. That, you say, is that the sort of thing that interests you as well? It's like, how can we get a sound that no one else has done yet? You know.
One of the best gigs that Bon and I ever went to was a washing machine being sampled for 45 minutes. Going through the entire spin cycle. Yeah. So dropping watermelons off a building, that really appeals to me.
It does.
Yeah. We try and use those sort of things as well. We do like messing around with weird sounds and taking sounds and then just completely ruining them as well. And it sounds a bit naff in some ways, but it's nice that, you know, you'll listen to a track of ours and you go, oh, that's a weird, horrible sound, but we kind of know what it started as, sort of thing. So there's a track on our first album called Dehibernation, and believe it or not, and I think this is an exclusive, I don't think we've ever said this before, there's a sort of groany, gnarly sound at the start of it. That's actually a field recording of a arcade machine at the end of Southport Pier playing the theme tune to Rainbow the people of a certain age will remember Rainbow, obviously.
Do, 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 do,
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
do, do, do,
Believe it or not,
yeah.
you will never know. Well, you do now, but
Yeah.
that we mangled it so much that's where it ended up, sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know. I know Pete's the same, but I get a sort of strange, nerdy, geeky pleasure knowing that thinking people listen to that sound. Going, you have no idea what I'm
I'm really pleased that you used that sound. And I am too. I think
Hey, he's good.
it's fantastic. There you
Oh
go.
my good, he's good. He's good.
For all of you Rainbow fans out there, of course.
That was Jeffrey, wasn't it?
Yeah. No. No. But also, there'll be everyone going, yeah. And do you remember the episode of Rainbow that they did with the knockers? Anyway, yeah. There was a. If people want to look it up on YouTube, there is a rude version of Rainbow, which is
if you want
very funny indeed.
If you want to get into our mindset, I think we've actually got a future song title. This is actually looking at the images of early Bungle, because he's so scary. Yeah, before he became the cuddly version, we know he's really scary. He's really scary. So I think we've actually got a song penned in called Early Bungle, or words to that effect. Okay.
Oh, fantastic. Before he became Chewbacca in the headlights. I mean, yeah, it's no. I mean, but that's what I love about electronic music, and I love about the people that make music with technology is kind of that fascination of where sounds come from and just what you can do with sounds. Because I think that is part and parcel of it. That's part of the kind of romance of it, if you like. And you know, I feel as well. It's liberated a whole load of creative people who, like myself, were kind of stuck with recorder for years at school. And then all of a sudden, a teacher brings in a synthesizer, and it's like, yes, I can actually do something with this, you know. Because I mean, you know, when you're sort of like struggling to keep up with everybody else, that's like, and you're like, oh, you know, I can't read the music that fast or whatever. And suddenly it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I can't play all that fast, because I can actually just bung it in there and then get it to play it out, you know. And actually then I can work with my limitations as much as with, you know, but you develop your own set of skills alongside that as well. Yeah. Like, you know, you get into like being able to be quite rhythmic, maybe. I mean, a lot of people that aren't drummers, for example, can be quite good rhythm wise on a keyboard, you know, but they couldn't for the life of them pick up a pair of drumsticks and bash out, you know, 4/4 time. It would just, you know, but give them one of these little babies, you know, and away they go. They're suddenly a drummer, right? You know, and I think that's great. I think it's entirely liberating. But what was the earliest kind of kit that you ever played with that sort of got you into this in the first place? Bon?
Crikey. Well, I mean, I was in bands as a teenager, and then sort of stopped being in bands. And then I got into sort of DJing a bit in my 20s, I suppose. So I guess using a couple of Technic 1210s and trying to beat match sort of thing was when I started realizing. And I borrowed a very early copy, and I think it was of like a DAW, like, you know, Ableton, but it was back then. I think it was called Acid. I think it became FL Studio. I could be wrong. So there's probably people listening going, no, that's not right. And I remember just trying to make a very basic techno track, just with a 4/4, you know, beat and the hi-hat and blah blah blah. And it took me forever. My computer was so slow. It was like a 386 or something. I think I had it on. And
that's lovely, isn't it?
you know, and I just thought there's something in this, but then I lost it again. And then me and Pete decided to put something together with John and Adam as well, who was in the band back then. And then it became this massive learning curve of all the technology sort of thing. I started on guitar, but the tech came much later, sort of thing.
Yeah. What about you, Pete? What were the first things you played with?
Well, I was pretty much the same. I played bass in bands, but I was always into synths as well. And in fact, one of the synths that John uses in our band is one that I bought a long time ago, about 25 years ago.
Wow.
So I used to kind of put through one of those old, remember the old 4-track tape things?
Yeah,
and
Tascam type material.
Yeah, like that. And so I'd kind of layer some synths in that, and then I had this really terrible Yamaha drum machine thing called a QY20.
Yeah.
You can see it on YouTube now. I think Tom Robinson did the video for it. He did a version of 2468 Motorway on this really ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
I used to use that for drum beats, just kind of for my own amusement, because they weren't used for the bands that I was in at the time. And then it kind of it went by the wayside for a while until we got Flange Circus together. But I think the things like, even things like iPads now are so. You were talking about leveling the playing field. It's amazing the amount of apps you can get where you can just take things in and sample them and create drum beats. And we kind of started from there. We did some very, very early demo stuff on iPads, didn't we, Bon, with the just kind of the backing tracks just to get us going, and then built out from there. And then it becomes a race to buy as much technology and kit as you can.
It's a downhill slide. Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
I think it's really bad being in a band for us if you have that kind of compulsive behavior.
No, it can.
If you like tech,
yeah. No, it can be. I think I had a similar conversation with someone from Sway. I think it was a similar sort of thing. Where's all the money gone? It's on. It's going on kit. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you how old I am. I started back in the day when it was tape. That's what you played with, and you literally had like type Ewer type tape, and you would literally loop it round and record what you could on it. Yeah, creating tape loops, sitting there and recording that. But then, when Tascam came along, or the 4-track recorders, I think all of us use those things and bludgeon them to death. In terms of you'd have this tiny cassette, no different from this, folks, which seriously, quality-wise, can't actually hold an awful lot if you're multi-tracking. And there we were trying to triple up, before and then put onto another track. And by the time you've got your millions of tracks on there, you play it to your friends. It's like shh over the top.
I could probably reach from here if I stood up now. I can see it up there as my the demo tape I did for a band in the 1980s. So that was done, but that was done on we're going to get really geeky and techie and old school in now. But we were that was done on an Amstrad multi-track recorder, and it looked like a hi-fi stack that you could record into it. Now, I didn't do any of the recording, bizarrely enough. In later life, now I'm gone to, I've learned how to do recording properly, sort of thing at Spirit Studios in Manchester, SSR as it used to be. But I look back and I think and the quality's it's pretty rubbish. But given my mate Mark Watson, if he's ever bizarrely, I haven't seen him for 30 years, but he managed to record something that was half decent, and I can't even remember what microphones were, because we had a drum kit. It was it was a 4-piece rock band sort of thing, and he managed to record that on that with effects and all sorts, and you think, wow, we did so much. And of course now the bizarre thing is it's come full circle, and all those sort of technologies are what the youth of today want to record on. Do you know what I mean? And we're just buying emulations of tape plugins, to make it sound like that.
Does it make it sound awful? Yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's wonderful how that all happens. I think the first tech that I had was a Yamaha CX5M, if anyone remembers that one. Which was sort of a hybrid between Yamaha and I think it was Mitsubishi Computers. Right. So it was literally a computer unit with carts that went in the top, and then a Yamaha keyboard, and it had like Yamaha sequencing on it as well. And it was great. The school bought one, and they dragged me out of maths class and said, do you know how to program this? Because we haven't got Scooby-Doos. And I spent many a lovely time at school trying to get this thing to make noises, but also program Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat into it, which is a lesson itself in music. But yeah, it's all it's all great. It's all great fun. So going in terms of influences to you both over the years, I mean, is there anyone that stands out in terms of innovators, sound wise, that you know you really look up to, that say, well, they've really influenced me in terms of, not necessarily in terms of sound, but just in terms of wanting to do what I do?
Peter,
Pete,
I think
can I go first?
one of the interesting things about us is that all three of us in the band have got completely different influences, and yet we've somehow managed to coalesce around a sound that is ours. So yeah, you'll get completely different answers from Bon and John if he was here. I suppose I was more heavily influenced by bass players, and I'm really into prog rock. So it's you know, people like Chris Squire
Geddy.
and John. Not so much Geddy Lee, but you know, I kind of I don't recognise that he's an amazing bass player. But yeah, it was much more kind of Chris Squire from Yes was probably one of my, you know, I really wanted that kind of where the bass is the kind of lead, and it's really, you know, that kind of sound that he gets. Yeah, was always what I was trying to go for. Bon would probably say that I'm sometimes a bit too much like Peter Hook in wanting to turn my chorus pedal on a lot, but you know.
I think we had a rehearsal on Sunday when I said, "Why have you got chorus on that? Turn it off."
The bass should be a lead. The bass should be a lead instrument, shouldn't it? It really should.
Well,
you know.
Well, actually, in our tracks, the bass, a lot of them are very bass driven, and the bass carries the melody in a lot of our tracks, actually.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. Well, those are great influences, and you know, there's a connection there. I mean, you mentioned earlier Horn. There's a connection there. You know, yes, Trevor Horn, production, electronica, art of noise, etc. I mean, there you go. You see, we brought it back round to hornology again. But what about you?
I don't know, influences. I mean, because I've been through so many. So I'm bloody old, as you can tell. I've been through so many sort of like phases. It's a phase you'll grow out of. You know, so I'll freely admit, you know, I was a bit of a goth in the 80s, and then I got really into techno. I got via sort of industrial, so things like Front 242 and Nitzer Ebb and bands like that. Young Gods particularly. In the sort of early 90s, then into techno, and then just anything after that, really. That was the last phase. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of techno influences, you know, going to a live gig and then getting into all the abstract electronic stuff as well. There's sort of, you know, there was a good scene in Manchester when I first arrived, because I'm originally from the South, but I arrived in Manchester in 1998. Right. And, you know, in that sort of period, that the noughties, I suppose you call them, there was a really good experimental sort of music scene in Manchester, particularly electronic music scene. And I was just blown away by what, like we were talking about, going to see a band play, you know, the Washing Machine sample. But, you know, I went to see nights where somebody would just put contact mics well, in fact, one night at the Britain's Protection, somebody just played an amplifier. In other words, made the amplifier feed back on itself. Nice. You know, it's just like, and I was blown away. I kind of knew there was an experimental music, but I've been a bit more, even though I was into sort of alternative indie or whatever you want to call it, I was suddenly very much aware that there was a whole world of possibilities, I suppose, you know, in terms of how you make noises, coming back to, you know, melons off the top of buildings again. So that kind of stuff really influenced me. And, you know, there was a night called Burst Couch in Manchester, and going to that regularly because I was friends with the guy that put it on. Just seeing people doing that's kind of really influenced me, thinking there's a whole world of possibilities. And as you said, Graham, it's kind of like, you know, never going to complain say that I'm a good musician, far from it, but that accessibility to make weird noise, and the fact that people like to listen to it, I suppose, is very important, you know, because you can make it to yourself. You know, democratization of music in that sense, and also the technology and the fact you can record something quality at home now. You know, that's kind of influenced me to carry on. But yeah, I mean, in terms of bands and stuff, but me and Pete do share some, you know, I do have a prog background a little bit as well. So, but yeah, it's going out and seeing bands like, I don't know, going to see Orbital, for example, and having my head blown off by Orbital live, you know, electronic music with just two blokes nodding away with banks of synthesizers, things like that. With, you know, really, I'm going to see bands like Godspeed You Black Emperor as well, because we're kind of influenced a bit by sort of post-rock type stuff. I think when we started off, we were going that route. We've kind of moved away a little bit from that now, I think.
It's a bit more post-rock, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how freeing do you find it in a way, especially when you're putting songs together, you're writing? How freeing do you find it that in a way you haven't got, you know, a singer per se there, and you're not therefore looking to kind of hook everything onto a set of lyrics and a vocal line?
It's a really good question. I mean, in some ways that's freeing, but also I think sometimes you think about how you're going to, it's composition, isn't it? If you've got a singer, for the most part, you're probably going to go verse, chorus, middle eight, verse, chorus, aren't you? Or double chorus at the end.
Yeah.
With us, sometimes we have Pete will come up with a bass line or a beat, or John will come up with a synth line, and likewise myself. And then it's like, well, how do we flesh this out without going down that verse, chorus type of sort of line?
I suppose also, and also, how do you hold the listener's attention? In the same way, because when you're creating around a singer, especially a good singer, then you can just sit on a groove for quite a while, or you can just create space, and the singer's voice will carry it. The singer's voice will fill that space and enable the listener to be in the song. When you haven't got that, you've got to make sure that there's something there that, because we all got no bloody attention span these days, have we? Especially you young people out there, you young whippersnappers. 20 seconds and you've gone. But you
can't listen to an album.
No, but you've got to keep that. You've got to keep them tuned in. So how do you go about that? Are you conscious of that, Bon?
I have, yeah. I mean, I think we are much more conscious, particularly with this album, Katabasis, that's coming out soon. Is that it's what they call in the music business, I think, ear candy. You know what I mean? Keeping little noises that keep the interest. You listen to any pop record for that matter. There's always something changing, even though it might go for that classic verse chorus type thing. There's always something new coming in, or there's a new element sort of thing. So I think we're getting better at songwriting in that sense. And I suppose, but the playing live as well, we it's the freedom of sort of, if you've got a proper drummer, freedom of a proper drummer is that we can extend bits, you can shorten bits, you can jam out for a bit and things like that. We don't really have that luxury as such, because we got program beats sort of thing. We do have a bit of elements of that. We can bring in certain things at certain times, but we're kind of stuck to a degree, not fully. I'm not saying 100%. Stuck to a kind of structure like that. But yeah, just keep bringing things in that keep people listening, particularly, as you say, without a lead singer as such. And obviously the other thing is we're really into using samples as well of weird stuff. And that usually keeps people, hopefully, I'm saying does, definitive, but we don't know. It keeps people interested as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that what you're saying about the structure, because when I spoke to, I don't know whether you've ever come across John Mouse and his stuff, but he went out, the first time I saw him, he went out with a live band. And he had a very live band type feel, but then the second time I saw him, it was just him and his laptop. And he said, "Well, there's pros and cons to both. When you go out with the band, you can kind of wing it a bit more. You can just sit back for a bit and let the band kind of take it, etc. But similarly, when you've got the structure there, and it's literally, you press the button and then it's all got to start, and it's got to, when it's going to end." You can start to think about the show a bit more. You can start to think about the flow of the whole evening a little bit more, and maybe what you're putting into each different element. Is there an element of that, Pete?
I think so. I think when we're rehearsing at the moment to do some gigs, hopefully soon after the album comes out, and we've certainly put a lot of thought into the order of the songs that we're going to play and how they're going to flow into each other. And we don't what Bon is particularly really good at is creating drones and textures that flow from one to another as well, to keep people interested. So it's not just a kind of stop, wait for the crowd to react. It's there's a natural kind of there's a natural progression from the start to the end of the set through the entire show. So almost like,
and I've promised as well that if you play locally, I'm going to come up and dad dance on the stage throughout the entire thing. So that should be exactly.
Yeah.
So that
we'll stick you in a mask. We'll stick you in a scary mask, and you can dance. I
can do that all night. Oh dear. That's got to be the best job ever in music, hasn't it?
Yeah. Still making a career out of it now. He was on Would I Lie to You, or whatever it was on Friday nights.
I know. And they say, give us a comment on it. Oh yeah. Okay, man.
Maybe that's what was it? Is it Anastasia and Hawkwind, was it? Yeah. I'm not suggesting necessarily doing what Anastasia does, sort of thing, did in the past. But having that vision. Because ultimately, and Pete does what Pete does. We're exchanging compliments here. Pete does brilliantly is the visuals. So one thing we do live is obviously always have visuals. And with the last album we did, which was called Rural Eerie, which was, don't say concept album, in some ways was a themed album sort of thing. We actually made a DVD. Pete made a film we all filmed stuff, but then Pete put it together and made a film for the music sort of thing. So it became this sort of, audio visual product, if you like. So we rely on those visuals, because otherwise, it's three blokes behind synths, and we want to give something back in some way. So if they don't want to look at us, they can watch the visuals sort of thing. Because because it hasn't got that, there's no necessarily a hook, as it were. There is obviously some melody, quite a lot of melody in there as well. It's not just all noise, but there's no lead singer to focus on. We want them to focus on the visuals for the most part, I think. Yeah. And also those drones in between songs are there to keep that. Pete put it very nicely, that we keep that sort of theme going. But it's also in case anybody doesn't clap. So we just go to the next.
Oh, so
there's no silence.
Pete, do you actually have slides up that go clap now?
That's
a
good idea.
That's a great bit, isn't it? Just like you could almost have you almost need a warm up act then, which is like someone coming on going, just like you do before pre-recorded TV programs. Now when the thing comes up and it says clap, that's your turn to clap. Okay, let's all try it now. Clap. Okay, good. So when you see this, come on, clap.
No.
Yeah. There you go.
Big clap, small clap.
What a great idea. But I mean, you say that about lead singers. I mean, even if you have a lead singer, it doesn't mean to say that the lead singer's a natural show person. I mean, there are. Let's face it. Yeah. There are those over the years who fundamentally can hold a stage and are wonderful to go and see live, because they just actually hold the audience in the palm of their hand. But there's plenty of bands that I've been to see over the years where the lead singer is a musician at the front, and they're not, in terms of that interaction with the audience, there's no extra interaction. So I think you've got to find your thing that makes the whole evening a more experience for everybody there, whether it's visuals or whether it's but part of it can just be the fact that you go and talk to people afterwards. I mean, I really genuinely believe, especially in since COVID, that a lot of bands are doing an awful lot better just because they're actually not being so aloof, and they're actually bothering to interact with the audience all the time, and that's a really important thing.
I mean, I think we're quite aware of that in some ways, because what we do in some way, it could be perceived as being a bit a bit so nice and pretentious, I'll be frank about it, sort of thing. But we do have an element of humour in there. Do you know what I mean? We do try and keep an, because we like absurd things, so that's the thing that combines us all. So I mean, whether it's the song titles or some of the visuals or what, or even our band name for that matter.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it back to that, because you know we promised that right at the beginning. We've kept you waiting. All of those people. Benjamin himself said it was a fantastic band name.
Thank you, Ben.
So we know it's a fantastic band name, but now we're going to hear why. Where did it come from? I mean, you know, flange as in a guitar flange. Yeah. Is that where it comes from?
Do you want to do the story, Pete?
It was an in-joke that went too far. Before you know it, basically, you're in a band for 10 years with the name. It's pretty much the way it came about. So a few years ago, I was in Belfast with some friends, with John, who's in the band, and some other friends, and someone took a picture of us, and it looked like the worst, terrible middle distance indie band, photograph that could be, and it was posted on Facebook, and someone, it was Bon, actually, I think, who christened the picture Flange Circus. So when we came to do the band, before we did it, when we came to do the band, we just used that as a name and didn't really think much of it. And then before we knew it, we were kind of putting releases out, and people were coming to see us.
And so, what a great name!
Yeah.
It was too late.
Yeah. Well, look, the way I always looked at it with band names is, you got to print it on a T-shirt, and once you printed it on the T-shirt and it looks good, then that's it. And Flange Circus will work on a T-shirt, right? It just does. Flange Circus. Who wouldn't want a T-shirt with Flange Circus on it? And with that, we're now saying that the band will now take pre-orders for any of your T-shirts that you want with Flange Circus on there. So I don't know if you've sorted merch or not, but you have now. All right.
Well, yeah, that's funny you should say that as a bit of a plug. There will be a T-shirt available with the album. You can get a bundle deal of the album on CD and the T-shirt. So that was nicely segued, Graham.
Thank you. There you go. You see, there we go. So Flange T-shirts are available in all sizes, including Flange, which is a particular size all of its own. I think actually between the two of you guys, or the three of you, I think at some stage you should get commissioned a pedal called Flange Circus.
That would be nice, yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? You could use that, Pete.
Yeah.
You could go there. There's Boss. There you go. The Boss Flange
Electro Harmonics, or whatever they're called.
I think you'd probably get sued by Boss if you actually superimposed Flange Circus onto a Boss pedal. But it's worth a go and see.
You could always just biro in it on a flange pedal, couldn't you? You could just.
I think so. I mean, just do it like that. Yeah, there you go. If anyone wants to know what a Flange Circus pedal sounds like, you have to wait to the next episode of this, and then we'll let you know. Bon, Peter, I don't know what's happening with this camera today. Stop it. Thanks so much for coming and talking music with me today. Of course, now you're all incredibly intrigued as to find out what this actually sounds like. That's the whole idea of these shows. I talk to people, you get to know them, and then you go, that sounds intriguing. I wonder what it sounds like. Well, now go and find out. The best place to do that, of course, is one of two places. In this case, of course, analogtrash.com, presumably Bandcamp as well. Yeah, it's a great place. And the Bandcamp is Bandcamp/Flange Circus, presumably, is it?
Flange Circus.bandcamp, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, just go to Bandcamp and put Flange Circus in. Of course,
I promise you.
No. Of course, it will be available. It will be available to stream elsewhere as well, but don't do that because that doesn't get anybody any money. So, put your hand in your pocket, go to Bandcamp, go to analog.com, do the subscription service thing and get some stuff from Flange Circus as well. Get a load of other band stuff at the same time. Support independent music, because otherwise, folks, it won't happen. People just think it's a commodity that comes almost out of lavatories, but it isn't. People actually make this stuff in their homes. There you go. And it costs them money, as we've heard today. It costs a lot of money because, you know, you get addicted to kit and all of that sort of thing. So Pete, Bon, thank you very much for joining me. They will be sharing this, hopefully, as well on their social media.
Yes,
so
definitely.
do look out for it. And we'll be back with another My Music very soon. Until then, bye for now.